I am Isaac, 30 years old, born into a family construction business that became my prison. Since childhood, I watched my brother Max enjoy freedom while I shouldered responsibility. Everything imploded at a family dinner when Dad uttered those crushing words, "You have work while your brother enjoys." It is that simple. If you do not like it, get out. The worst part, Mom nodded along, so I calmly replied, "Great. Then I will leave, and you can pay your own bills." It is that simple. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button. If you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family injustice. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago shaped me in ways I never fully appreciated until recently. Our family home was modest but comfortable, nestled among similar houses, with neatly trimmed lawns and basketball hoops mounted above garages. This was where our family story unfolded, one of unequal expectations and differential treatment that would eventually force me to make the hardest decision of my life. My grandfather started Mitchell Construction in 1967, with nothing but a pickup truck, a toolbox, and unwavering determination. He built it from the ground up, working 16-hour days and sacrificing weekends to establish a reputation for quality and reliability. When my father Richard took over in 1993, the company had grown to employ 15 people and had a solid client base throughout the Chicago area. Dad always spoke reverently about my grandfather, telling Max and me stories about his work ethic and vision, usually ending with meaningful glances in my direction. From the age of 10, Dad started grooming me to follow in his footsteps. While other kids enjoyed summer breaks playing baseball or swimming at the community pool, I was waking up at 6 a.m. to accompany him to job sites. "This will all be yours someday, Isaac." He would say, his hand heavy on my shoulder as we surveyed a foundation being poured or a frame going up. "You need to learn every aspect of the business from the ground up." My initial excitement about spending time with Dad quickly gave way to exhaustion and loneliness as I realized this was not father-son bonding, but training for a role I never chose. By 13, I was spending every weekend and school break working. I cleaned job sites, organized tools, ran errands for foremen, and gradually learned more skilled tasks like measuring, cutting, and basic carpentry. Meanwhile, Max, only 2 years younger, spent his summers at sports camps, sleepovers, and later road trips with friends. His room filled with trophies from soccer and baseball, while mine accumulated work gloves with holes worn through the fingers. "Your brother is not cut out for the business," Dad would explain when I occasionally questioned the disparity. "You have the Mitchell Construction genes. You should be proud of that." Mom, always the family peacekeeper, reinforced this narrative in gentler ways. "Isaac, honey, you are so responsible and mature for your age. Max needs more time to find his way." Her words were meant as a compliment, but they rang hollow when they excused preferential treatment. Despite my work schedule, I maintained a 3.9 GPA throughout high school. Math and physics came naturally to me, and I dreamed of studying engineering at University of Illinois, or maybe even MIT. I secretly filled out applications during my senior year, hope swelling when acceptance letters arrived along with scholarship offers. That hope deflated during a special dinner Dad arranged when those acceptance packets arrived. "Son, college is a waste of time for someone with your practical experience," he declared. "You already know more about construction than those professors with their theoretical knowledge. The business needs you now." He laid out his plan. I would start full-time immediately after graduation, working my way through every department. In 5 years, we would discuss partnership. Mom sat beside him, nodding encouragingly, while Max texted under the table, clearly bored by a conversation that would never involve him. The decision felt both made for me and somehow my own. Pride in being trusted with the family legacy mixed with disappointment about abandoning my engineering dreams. I told myself college could wait, family came first. At 18, I became a full-time employee of Mitchell Construction, starting in the trenches with the laborers despite already having years of experience. Dad insisted I earn respect rather than having it handed to me because of our shared last name. I worked harder than anyone, arriving first and leaving last, learning every trick and technique from our veteran crew members. As the years passed, my responsibilities grew. By 23, I was managing projects. By 26, I was handling client relationships. and bidding on new contracts. The company grew from 15 employees to 35 under my oversight, and our annual revenue doubled. Throughout these 12 years, Max floated through life on a path paved with parental support and minimal expectations. He attended University of Wisconsin for 5 years, changing majors 3 times before graduating with a general business degree. Dad paid for everything: tuition, apartment, car, even a semester abroad in Barcelona that turned into a full year when Max claimed he was finding himself. After college, Max spent 2 years exploring career options, which meant trying out jobs for a few months before quitting when they became too demanding. Then came the startup attempts, a specialty food delivery service that failed after 6 months, followed by a sports memorabilia website that never launched, despite $20,000 of family investment. Each failure was met not with accountability, but with parental understanding. "He is trying to find his passion," Mom would explain during family dinners, when I silently questioned another bailout. "Not everyone knows their path as early as you did, Isaac." I buried my resentment under work and responsibility, telling myself that someday my dedication would be recognized and rewarded. I was investing in my future while Max was wasting time. At least that is what I believed then. I did not understand that in our family, effort and results were disconnected from reward and recognition in ways that would eventually break me. By my late 20s, I was essentially running Mitchell Construction, while Dad gradually stepped back from daily operations. He still held the title of CEO and made the final decisions on major contracts, but I handled everything else: project management, client relationships, hiring, training equipment, purchasing, and financial oversight. My typical day started at 5:30 a.m. with paperwork and ended well after 7 p.m., after site visits and troubleshooting. Under my leadership, the company expanded into commercial renovation projects that significantly increased our profit margins. I introduced modern project management software that streamlined our operations and reduced costly delays. When the housing market briefly slumped, I pivoted us toward government contracts for public facility renovations, keeping all our crews employed when competitors were laying off workers. The West Side Library renovation became our signature project, completed 3 weeks ahead of schedule and 5% under budget, earning us features in 2 construction industry publications. The client specifically praised my innovative solution to unexpected structural issues discovered mid-project. Through all this growth, Dad continued making vague promises about my future in the company. "Just a little longer, son, and we will make things official," he would say whenever I brought up the partnership he had dangled before me for years. "The timing needs to be right." I believed him because I needed to justify the decade plus I had invested. Meanwhile, I watched my high school friends advance in their careers, buying homes and starting families, while I remained stuck in a holding pattern, working myself to exhaustion for a promise that seemed perpetually just out of reach. Then came the bombshell. After his latest failed venture, an exclusive travel club that collapsed after taking membership fees from his college friends, Max returned to Chicago. A week later, Dad called a company meeting. "I am proud to announce that Max will be joining Mitchell Construction as Executive Vice President of Business Development," Dad announced to the assembled employees, his arm around Max's shoulders. His business degree and entrepreneurial experience make him perfectly suited to help take this company to the next level. I stood frozen at the back of the room, blindsided completely. The position Dad described was newly created with responsibilities carved directly from my domain. Worse, I later discovered that Max's starting salary would nearly match mine compensation it had taken me 12 years to achieve. When the meeting dispersed, I pulled Dad into his office. "What is going on? We never discussed this. We do not need an executive VP of anything, and Max has no construction experience whatsoever." Dad leaned back in his chair, irritation flashing across his face. "Isaac, this company needs fresh perspectives. You are too bogged down in operations to see the bigger picture. Max brings outside business knowledge we need." "Outside business knowledge, Dad. Every business he has touched has failed spectacularly, and carving a position for him at nearly my salary when I have given this company my entire adult life. How is that fair?" His expression hardened. "Fair. This is my company, and I decide what is fair. Max needs structure and responsibility. This is good for him. And what about what is good for me, for the company? for our employees who actually know what they are doing. Dad stood up, signaling the conversation was over. I expect you to support this decision and help your brother learn the ropes. Family first, Isaac. Always family first. That evening, I sought support from Mom, hoping she might see the injustice and speak to Dad on my behalf. Instead, she offered justifications that cut deeper than Dad's dismissal. Honey, you and Max are just different, she said, patting my hand across her kitchen island while preparing dinner. You have always been naturally responsible and capable. Things come harder to Max. He needs more support and structure than you do. Try to be understanding. He looks up to you. So because I am reliable, I get punished with more work and less recognition. How does that make sense? Nobody is punishing you, she sighed. We are just trying to help Max find his footing. You already know your place in the world. My relationship with Rachel, my girlfriend of 3 years, began suffering under the weight of my growing frustration and endless work hours. A hospital administrator with her own demanding career, she supported my ambitions but questioned my family's treatment. Isaac, they take advantage of you because you let them, she said one night after I canceled our dinner plans to handle a crisis Max had created by promising impossible timeline commitments to a new client. They will never change unless you force them to see you differently. What am I supposed to do? Walk away from 12 years of work? This company is my future. She looked at me with sad eyes. Is it? Or is it just your present and past? Because from where I stand, your father has no intention of ever truly sharing control. Her words haunted me, especially as Max settled into his role, which primarily consisted of long lunches with potential clients, taking credit for my project designs and meetings, and leaving early every Thursday for networking on the golf course. While I averaged 70 hours weekly, Max rarely exceeded 30, most of that spent on his phone or wandering job sites, asking basic questions that disrupted our cruise. The physical toll became impossible to ignore. I developed tension headaches that lasted for days. My sleep deteriorated to 4 restless hours nightly. I caught every cold that circulated through the office. My doctor warned about my blood pressure and suggested stress management techniques I had no time to practice. 6 months into Max's leadership, he somehow convinced Dad to let him lead the bid on the Lincoln Park Community Center renovation, our potentially largest contract ever. Despite my protests, Dad insisted this was Max's chance to prove himself. I was instructed to advise from the sidelines while keeping all my other responsibilities. The morning Max was supposed to submit our proposal, he called in sick with a hangover, after celebrating prematurely the night before. I spent 14 frantic hours completing the unfinished bid documents, submitted them just before deadline, and secured the contract that would keep our company profitable through the following year. At the next staff meeting, Dad congratulated Max on landing the project. Max accepted the praise with a humble smile, never mentioning my rescue effort. When Marcus, our senior foreman, who knew the truth, tried to correct the record, Dad smoothly interrupted and changed the subject. That night, looking at myself in the bathroom mirror, hollow-eyed and unrecognizable even to myself, I realized something had to give. If it did not, that something would be me. 2 weeks after the Lincoln Park contract situation, Mom called to invite Rachel and me to a family dinner at their house. Your father wants to discuss some exciting new changes at the company, she said with forced cheerfulness. Sunday at 6. I am making your favorite pot roast. Rachel squeezed my hand as we pulled into my parents' driveway that Sunday evening. Remember what we talked about, she whispered. Stand your ground. Your worth is not determined by their recognition. I nodded, though my stomach churned with anxiety. Something about this dinner felt different, pivotal, in ways I could not yet articulate. The family home looked the same as always: pristine lawn, carefully maintained flower beds, and the handcrafted porch swing I had built in high school woodshop. Inside, the formal dining room was set with the good china reserved for holidays and special occasions, crystal water glasses catching the light from the chandelier above. Mom bustled between kitchen and dining room, refusing offers of help with practiced martyrdom. Dad nursed a scotch in his leather armchair, asking about current projects while checking sports scores on his phone. Rachel made polite conversation, her hand reassuringly resting on my knee under the table. Max and his girlfriend Natalie arrived 45 minutes late without apology. Traffic was insane, he announced, helping himself to the bar cart. Natalie air-kissed everyone before launching into a story about a celebrity she had spotted at brunch. When we finally sat down to dinner, Dad waited until the main course was served before clearing his throat. I have been thinking about the future of Mitchell Construction, he began, raising his glass. And I believe it is time for some structural changes to reflect the contributions of both my sons. He outlined a new profit-sharing plan for the company's leadership himself, me and Max. Despite my significantly larger role and longer tenure, the plan would split year-end bonuses equally between the three of us. Additionally, Max would take over client acquisition entirely, while I would continue managing operations plus take on new financial oversight responsibilities previously handled by our accountant. In essence, Dad concluded this streamlines our leadership structure while recognizing the Mitchell family legacy. The table fell silent. Rachel's hand tightened around mine under the table. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, organizing my thoughts before responding. Let me make sure I understand, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Max, who has been with the company for 6 months, will receive the same profit share as me, who has worked there for 12 years. Additionally, I will take on more responsibilities while Max focuses solely on sales. Is that correct? Dad nodded, seemingly pleased I had summarized so efficiently. Exactly. Max has a natural talent for client relations, and you excel at the operational details. We are playing to everyone's strengths. And how does this compensation structure reflect the actual work distribution? I continued. Currently, I work approximately 70 hours weekly compared to Max's 30. I directly manage 33 employees while Max manages none. Last quarter projects I oversaw generated 87% of company revenue. Dad's expression darkened. Isaac, this is not about tallying hours or claiming credit. This is a family business, and both of you are family. It seems very much about hours and credit when it comes to my responsibilities, I countered, but somehow those metrics disappear when determining compensation. Max interjected, swirling his wine. Bro, why are you making this so complicated? Dad is being incredibly generous to both of us. Generous. The word stuck in my throat. I have dedicated my entire adult life to this company. I skipped college, sacrificed friendships, worked nights and weekends, solved problems, trained employees, and built client relationships. That is not something that deserves generosity. It deserves fair recognition. Dad's fist hit the table, rattling the silverware. Enough, I built this company. I decide how it runs and who gets what. You have work because I gave you work. Your brother enjoys more freedom because that is what I decided. It is that simple. And if you do not like it, Isaac, you can get out. The room froze. Even Max looked surprised at Dad's outburst. I turned to Mom, hoping for some intervention, some acknowledgement of the injustice. Instead, she reached for Dad's hand. Isaac, honey, your father is right. This attitude is not helpful. You have always been the responsible one. It is your nature. Max needs more guidance and support. Why make this into a competition? Family businesses require sacrifice. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Not just Dad, but Mom too, both choosing Max's comfort over my dignity. Over a decade of suppressed resentment crystallized into perfect clarity in that moment. I looked at Rachel, who gave me a slight nod of encouragement, then back at my parents. Great, I said, my voice calm despite the thundering in my chest. Then I will leave, and you can pay your own bills. It is that simple. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my company keycard and phone, and placed them on the table. Effective immediately, I resigned from Mitchell Construction. You will find all current project files updated on the server. The Lincoln Park schedules need revision by Tuesday. The Wagner renovation has an inspection on Thursday that someone will need to handle. Payroll is due Friday. Dad's face flushed red. Now wait just a minute. No. I interrupted, standing up. For the first time in my adult life, I am not waiting for your permission or approval. Rachel, are you ready to go? She stood beside me, dignified and supportive. Dad's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. You cannot be serious. Where will you go? What will you do? You are overreacting to constructive feedback. This was not feedback. This was a lifetime of unequal treatment coming to its logical conclusion. I helped Rachel with her coat. You will cool off and come back, Dad declared as we headed for the door. You always do the responsible thing. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the family tableau, Dad red-faced and blustering, Mom wringing her hands, Max wide-eyed and confused, the half-eaten meal abandoned. Not anymore, I said, and closed the door behind us. The silent drive from my parents' house marked the beginning of the strangest period of my life. Rachel suggested going to her apartment, but I needed space to process the magnitude of what had just happened. Can you drop me at Jake's place? I asked. Jake had been my best friend since 7th grade, one of the few friendships I had maintained despite my work schedule. As a freelance graphic designer, he kept unconventional hours and would likely be home on a Sunday night. Jake opened his door, took one look at my face, and ushered me inside without questions. Only after handing me a beer did he ask, "What happened, man?" The story poured out of me, not just the dinner, but 12 years of accumulated slights and inequities. Jake listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or shaking his head at particularly egregious examples. "You can crash here as long as you need," he said when I finished. "The couch is yours. No timeline, no pressure." That first night on Jake's couch, I stared at the ceiling until dawn, alternating between panic at having abandoned my career and relief at finally standing up for myself. By morning, my phone contained 15 missed calls and 23 text messages from my parents and Max. I silenced the ringer and placed it face down on the coffee table. Rachel came by before her hospital shift, bringing breakfast and unwavering support. "I am proud of you," she said, squeezing my hand. "This was a long time coming." "I have no idea what comes next," I admitted. "That is the beauty of it," she replied. "For the first time, you get to decide." The first week passed in a blur of practical concerns. I had savings, not as much as I should have after 12 years of work given my below-market salary, but enough to sustain me for a few months if I was careful. I retrieved essential belongings from my apartment during hours I knew my family would be at work, half expecting to find the locks changed despite my name on the lease. Dad's communications evolved, predictably initial anger. "Your behavior was disrespectful and unprofessional," followed by guilt-tripping. "Your mother can barely eat. She is so upset," then grudging offers. "Let us discuss a revised arrangement." I responded to none of them. Max's lone text message read, "Hope you are happy. Dad gave me your office. Nice view." I blocked his number immediately. Mom's approach proved more insidious. She left voicemails filled with family anecdotes and references to my childhood, as if reminding me of happier times might reel me back into the dysfunction. "Family is forever, Isaac," she said in one message. "You cannot just walk away from blood." By week 3, I had submitted job applications to every major construction and project management firm in the Chicago area. My resume looked impressive on paper, 12 years of escalating responsibility at a successful company. But interviews inevitably turned awkward when explaining my departure from the family business. Human resources representatives exchanged glances when I declined to provide references from my only employer. "Your technical qualifications are excellent," one hiring manager said, "but we are concerned about the circumstances of your leaving Mitchell Construction. Family businesses are complicated. We would need some assurance this situation will not follow you here." Translation: they feared my father's influence in the tight-knit Chicago construction community. They were right to worry. By the 2-month mark, my savings dwindled alarmingly. Jake refused my offers to contribute to rent, but I insisted on covering groceries and utilities. Rachel suggested moving in together to share expenses, but I resisted. My life felt too unstable to make that commitment despite our strong relationship. Depression crept in around the edges of my days. I questioned every decision, second-guessed my worth, and struggled to envision a future beyond my family's shadow. Sleep became elusive again, this time haunted not by work stress, but by fear of failure. I threw away a guaranteed future, I told Rachel during a particularly low moment. What if that was my only chance at success? If success means sacrificing your self-respect, is it really success, she countered? The lowest point came 3 months after the fateful dinner. I was at Henderson's Hardware purchasing supplies for a small bathroom renovation in Jake's apartment, my way of contributing to our living arrangement. As I compared fixture options, a familiar voice boomed from the next aisle. Isaac. Finally decided to come out of hiding, huh? Dad stood there flanked by Marcus, our senior foreman. Marcus gave me an apologetic look before suddenly becoming very interested in comparing pipe fittings. I am not hiding, I replied, turning back to the shower heads. Dad moved closer, lowering his voice. This tantrum has gone on long enough, son. The Lincoln Park project is behind schedule. 3 subcontractors have threatened to walk. Max is in over his head. That sounds like a management problem. Your management problem. Your responsibility. He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. Come back. Monday. Same office. 10% raise. And we will discuss partnership again in 6 months. I shrugged his hand away. Under the same conditions, where Max gets equal rewards for fraction of the work. Max is family. So am I. That is the part you keep forgetting. His expression hardened. This is your last chance, Isaac. The offer expires today. Come back now, or never. For a brief wavering moment, financial security beckoned. My dwindling bank account, unsuccessful job search, and growing anxiety, all whispered to accept. But Rachel's words echoed louder. If success means sacrificing your self-respect, is it really success? Goodbye, Dad, I said, placing the shower head in my basket and walking toward checkout. That night, with only 6 weeks of expenses left in my account, and no prospects in sight, I hit rock bottom. Jake found me sitting in the dark, staring at job listings in distant cities, considering a complete restart somewhere beyond my father's influence. You know, Jake said, settling beside me with 2 beers. I have been thinking about that client you helped me with last year. The gym owner. Adrian. Remember him? I nodded. I had advised Jake on some structural concerns during his redesign of Adrian's fitness center branding. He asked about you the other day when I was updating his website. Apparently he is looking to renovate a bigger space. Said he remembered how you spotted that load-bearing issue everyone else missed. This casual comment, delivered without expectation, would unknowingly change the trajectory of my life. Adrian Franco owned Elevation Fitness, a boutique gym that had outgrown its original location. When Jake arranged our meeting, I expected to offer some informal advice about his renovation. I did not expect a business opportunity. We met at a coffee shop near his current gym. Adrian, a former college athlete turned entrepreneur, radiated the focused energy of someone who sets goals and demolishes them. Jake tells me you know construction inside out, he said after preliminaries. I have some experience, I acknowledged cautiously. And that you recently left your family business. I tensed. Yes. Adrian nodded, surprising me with his next words. Good for you. I left my father's insurance agency 5 years ago when he refused to modernize. Best decision I ever made, though. It took 2 years of ramen noodles before I got this gym off the ground. His candor disarmed me. For the first time, I met someone who understood the particular pain of walking away from family expectations. Adrian pushed a folder across the table containing plans for a vacant commercial building. I have bought this property. It needs complete renovation to become a state-of-the-art fitness center. The contractors I have spoken with either want to gut everything which I cannot afford or do cosmetic fixes that will not address structural issues. What are you looking for exactly? I asked already, noting several inefficiencies in the preliminary plans. Someone who sees what this could be. Someone who understands construction but thinks beyond conventional approaches. He paused. Someone like you, according to what I saw in that branding meeting last year. Over the next 2 hours, we discussed possibilities for the space. I sketched alternative layouts, suggested eco-friendly materials that would save money long-term, and identified ways to preserve the building's character while modernizing its functionality. As we wrapped up, Adrian made an unexpected proposal. I need a contractor I can trust for this project, but I also need a business partner going forward. I have plans for 3 more locations if this expansion succeeds. I have capital and clientele. You have construction expertise I lack. What would you think about forming a company together? The offer stunned me. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you spotted a major structural issue in 5 minutes that 3 other contractors missed. I know you left a guaranteed inheritance because you valued your worth. I know you think differently about building spaces. He shrugged. Sometimes the best partnerships start with gut instinct. We agreed to a second meeting with more formal discussions. Rachel helped me prepare a business proposal researching small business structures and partnership agreements. Jake offered his couch for as long as it takes for this to become something real. 1 week and 4 meetings later, Franco Mitchell Construction became official. A renovation company specializing in sustainable commercial transformations. Adrian secured a small business loan with his property as collateral, and Rachel co-signed a personal loan that gave me startup capital to match Adrian's investment. We leased a tiny office above a print shop and purchased a used truck with the company logo Jake designed. Our first project would be Adrian's gym renovation, with an aggressive 3-month timeline and tight budget. If successful, it would serve as our portfolio piece to attract more clients. The day we signed our partnership papers, I received another text from Dad. The offer still stands if you come to your senses. Family business belongs in the family. I did not respond, but for the first time the message provoked determination rather than doubt. Working for myself revealed capabilities I never knew I possessed. Without my father's shadow, I made decisions confidently and quickly. My years of experience translated into efficient workflows and creative solutions to inevitable construction challenges. Adrian's business acumen complemented my technical knowledge perfectly. He handled client acquisition and financial management while I oversaw the actual building work. The gym renovation progressed rapidly. I hired 2 skilled workers who had recently been laid off from a larger company, paying them fair wages and reasonable hours, the opposite of how my father treated our crews. When we encountered unexpected electrical issues behind an old wall, I developed a workaround that saved thousands without compromising safety. Word spread quickly. A cafe owner who trained at Adrian's gym hired us to renovate his second location. A boutique hotelier asked us to bid on converting an old apartment building. By month 4, we had completed the gym project on time and under budget and had contracts for 3 more renovations. Most satisfying was the call I received from Marcus, my father's senior foreman for 15 years. "The company is falling apart, Isaac," he said. "Your dad is micromanaging everything Max is making, promises we cannot keep, and morale is at rock bottom. 3 of us are thinking of leaving. Any chance you need experienced crew members?" By month 6, Franco Mitchell employed 7 people, including Marcus and Tina, our former office manager, who brought valuable institutional knowledge and client relationships. We specialized in eco-friendly renovations that preserved historical elements while modernizing functionality, a niche that attracted environmentally conscious business owners willing to pay premium rates for sustainable construction. I developed a signature approach to repurposing original materials, reducing waste, and creating unique aesthetic features that distinguished our projects. A local business magazine featured our gym renovation, highlighting our innovative use of reclaimed timber and energy-efficient systems. The publicity brought more clients and established our reputation as forward-thinking builders. Meanwhile, Mitchell Construction struggled visibly. Industry contacts reported missed deadlines, quality issues, and client complaints. The Lincoln Park Community Center project, the one I had rescued before leaving, went significantly over budget and faced potential litigation for contract violations. Dad was working 80-hour weeks trying to manage what I had handled previously, while Max reportedly spent more time making excuses than solutions. Rachel supported me through every step of this transition. Our relationship strengthened as I established healthier work boundaries, no more 70-hour weeks or missed dates. We reserved Sundays for ourselves, regardless of project deadlines. When she was offered a promotion to hospital administration, I enthusiastically supported her career advancement. just as she had backed my leap of faith. After 6 months of estrangement, I realized I had been building more than a business. I was constructing a life on my own terms, one with balance, purpose, and relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The foundation was stronger than anything I had ever created at Mitchell Construction. 9 months after walking away from my family business, Franco Mitchell Construction had established itself as a respected boutique firm with a growing portfolio of successful projects. We had expanded to 12 employees, moved to larger offices, and maintained a project waiting list that allowed us to be selective about which renovations we accepted. I had largely avoided news about Mitchell Construction, focusing instead on building something positive. But Chicago's construction community is small, and rumors eventually reached me through mutual suppliers and subcontractors. Mitchell just lost the Parkview office complex bid, Marcus informed me one afternoon. Third major contract they have lost in 2 months. I acknowledged the information without comment, but privately felt a complex mix of vindication and concern. These were people I had worked alongside for years, even if the leadership had treated me unfairly. Then came the call I had both expected and dreaded. Dad's name appeared on my phone on a Tuesday morning as I reviewed plans for an adaptive reuse project converting a warehouse into artist studios. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Isaac." Dad's voice sounded tired, lacking its usual authoritative tone. "We need to talk about the Westridge development. The client is threatening to terminate our contract unless you personally oversee the project redesign." Westridge was a long-standing client who had worked exclusively with me on their previous projects. I had suspected they might struggle with the transition after my departure. "I do not work for Mitchell Construction anymore," I replied evenly. "This is not about employment. This is about salvaging a $3 million contract that will keep 20 people employed through winter. I am asking for a consulting arrangement. Your terms." The old me would have capitulated, immediately prioritizing the company's needs over my boundaries. The new me recognized the manipulation tactic. "I'm sorry, but I have commitments to my own clients and employees now. I would suggest hiring an outside project manager with similar experience." Dad's frustration exploded. "Damn it, Isaac. This is your family's legacy. You are turning your back on. Is your pride worth watching everything your grandfather built collapse?" "This is not about pride," I replied calmly. "This is about respect for myself and for the contributions I made that were consistently undervalued. I wish you luck with Westridge." I ended the call feeling stronger than I had anticipated. Setting boundaries with my father no longer triggered guilt or anxiety. Progress. 2 weeks later, industry news confirmed what rumors had suggested. Mitchell Construction had lost the Westridge contract, along with 2 other major projects. Their staffing had decreased by 30%, through layoffs and resignations. A local business publication ran a story about succession challenges in family construction firms, using Mitchell as a cautionary example. Then came the news that truly surprised me. Mom called Rachel rather than contacting me directly. "She says they are selling the house," Rachel reported after their conversation. "Your father's business is filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Restructuring. Not liquidation, but still, it is serious." "What about Max?" I asked the first time I had spoken his name in months. "Apparently he left for Colorado with Natalie when things started deteriorating. He is working at his friend's ski resort or something." The information sat heavily in my chest. Despite everything, I had never wished financial ruin on my parents. The house had been in our family for 3 generations. A week later, I spotted Mom at the farmer's market, looking noticeably thinner and older. She saw me too, hesitating before approaching. "Isaac," she said simply. "You look well." "So do you," I lied politely. She gestured to my company shirt with the Franco Mitchell logo. "Your business is doing well. We hear good things." "Yes, we are staying busy." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken history. "Your father would never admit this," she finally said, "but losing you was the worst mistake he ever made. Not just for the business, but for our family." Her eyes welled with tears. I should have stood up for you that night, and many nights before. This small acknowledgement, the first either parent had offered, opened a door I had assumed permanently closed. 2 days later, I suggested to Rachel that we invite my parents for dinner at our apartment. Not for reconciliation necessarily, I clarified, but to hear them out. To see if there is any path forward, even if it is just civil interaction. Rachel squeezed my hand. I think that is healthy. Boundaries do not have to mean permanent estrangement. The dinner was initially stilted, weighted with months of separation and years of underlying tension. Dad looked physically diminished, his confident posture replaced by the slumped shoulders of someone carrying too heavy a burden. After preliminary small talk, he cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, Isaac. A significant one. The word seemed physically difficult for him to pronounce. I took your contributions for granted. I favored Max at your expense. I failed to recognize your value until you were gone. Mom reached for his hand, adding, We both failed you, honey. We justified unequal treatment by telling ourselves it was what each of you needed. We were wrong. Dad continued, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. The business is in trouble, serious trouble. Without your management, projects fell behind. Clients left. Mistakes multiplied. We are restructuring through bankruptcy, but... He swallowed hard. We may lose everything your grandfather built. The naked vulnerability from my formerly invincible father struck me deeply. This was not manipulation or a ploy to reclaim my labor. This was genuine devastation. What about Max? I asked. Mom's expression tightened. He left when the company started struggling. Said business management was not really his thing. He is working at a friend's resort in Aspen. Of course he was. What are your plans now? I asked. Downsize dramatically. Focus on smaller residential projects if we can keep the company afloat through restructuring. Sell the house to pay creditors. Dad paused. I am 63. Too old to start over, too young to retire with nothing. The conversation continued into the evening, more honest than any we had ever shared. They asked about my business, genuinely interested rather than competitive. They acknowledged specific instances where they had treated me unfairly. They expressed pride in what I had built independently. As they prepared to leave, Dad hesitated at the door. I do not expect forgiveness, and I certainly do not expect you to rescue the business. But I want you to know that I see now what I could not see before. You were always the heart of Mitchell Construction. Not me, not your grandfather, you. I spent several days reflecting on that conversation, discussing options with Rachel and Adrian. The hurt had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something less raw, less consuming. I could see my parents as flawed humans rather than authority figures who had failed me. A week later, I invited them to my office to propose a limited consulting arrangement. I would help stabilize their core projects and train their remaining staff on the systems I had implemented, but I would not rejoin the company. I would charge standard industry consulting rates, no family discount, and all interactions would remain strictly professional. Dad initially bristled at the formality, his pride flaring briefly before Mom placed a restraining hand on his arm. Those terms are more than fair, she said firmly. We are grateful for any assistance you are willing to provide. Over the next 3 months, I spent 10 hours weekly at Mitchell Construction, helping reorganize project workflows and training the scaled-down team on efficient management practices. I maintained clear boundaries, leaving precisely when scheduled regardless of unfinished business. When Dad occasionally slipped into old patterns of expectation, I calmly reminded him of our agreed terms. Gradually, the company stabilized, not at its former size, but at a sustainable level that could support my parents through retirement if carefully managed. They sold the family home, moving to a smaller condo that better suited their current circumstances. Most surprisingly, these limited interactions laid groundwork for personal healing. The professional context removed emotional triggers, allowing space for new patterns of interaction to form. Dad began asking for advice rather than issuing directives. Mom stopped making excuses for inequitable treatment. 1 year after walking away, I had not only built a successful business, but had also established something I never thought possible: A relationship with my parents based on mutual respect, rather than obligation and expectation. 1 year after that fateful family dinner, both my personal and professional lives had transformed completely. Franco Mitchell Construction had established itself as a leading boutique firm specializing in sustainable commercial renovations. We employed 18 people full-time, with a growing reputation for quality innovation and ethical business practices. Mitchell Construction survived its bankruptcy, restructuring, emerging as a smaller residential contractor focusing on kitchen and bathroom renovations. Dad continued as nominal head of the company but had begun training Marcus to take over day-to-day operations, something he had never considered with me despite years of my dedication. Our family relationships had evolved into something I never thought possible. The weekly consulting arrangement had eventually ended, but it established a new foundation for interaction. Mom and Dad invited Rachel and me for monthly dinners that no longer felt like minefields of unspoken resentment. We kept conversations light initially, gradually building toward more meaningful exchanges. Dad surprised me during one such dinner 6 months into our cautious reconciliation. "Your approach to the Henderson office renovation was brilliant," he said, referencing a project I had recently completed. "Using those original factory windows as interior partitions, I would never have thought of that. Your vision exceeds mine." Coming from a man who had spent decades positioning himself as the ultimate authority on all things construction, this acknowledgement represented monumental growth. Mom, too, had changed, no longer enabling favoritism or making excuses for unequal treatment. "I failed you as a mother," she admitted during a rare moment alone together in her kitchen. "I confused enabling Max with loving him, and I mistook taking you for granted as confidence in you. I am so sorry, Isaac." Max eventually returned to Chicago when the ski season ended in Colorado, finding our parents in dramatically different circumstances. His expectation of continued financial support met new boundaries from both parents. "We told him we could offer emotional support and a temporary place to stay, but no more bailouts," Mom explained. He did not take it well initially. When Max eventually reached out to me, I approached the interaction cautiously. Over coffee at a neutral location, he presented a version of events that cast him as an unwitting pawn in Dad's favoritism. "I never asked to be treated differently," he claimed. "Dad just always had different expectations for us." "The issue was never that you were treated differently," I explained. "It was that the difference was fundamentally unfair, and that neither you nor our parents acknowledged that unfairness." Our relationship remained cordial but distant. Max had yet to demonstrate substantial personal growth, but I no longer carried anger toward him. His choices and their consequences belonged to him alone. Rachel and I became engaged that spring, planning a small ceremony focused on quality time with those who had genuinely supported us through challenges. When she received a prestigious promotion to Director of Hospital Operations, I enthusiastically rearranged my schedule to attend the ceremony celebrating her achievement, something my former workaholic self would have found impossible. Our engagement prompted reflections on family patterns and how to avoid repeating them. "If we have children," I told Rachel one evening, "I want them to be valued for who they are, not what they can produce or provide." "That awareness is exactly why you will break the cycle," she replied with confidence. Adrian and I expanded Franco Mitchell's focus to include adaptive reuse projects that transformed abandoned industrial spaces into affordable housing and community centers. This work aligned with our values, while establishing us as innovators in sustainable urban renewal. A prominent architecture magazine featured our conversion of an old factory into mixed-income apartments with rooftop gardens and solar installations. The greatest transformation, however, occurred within me. The constant need for parental approval that had driven me for decades gradually subsided, replaced by an internal compass calibrated to my own values and priorities. I measured success not by comparison to others, but by alignment with my personal ethics and goals. I learned that walking away from toxic situations, even when financially risky, creates space for authentic growth. The year of struggle after leaving Mitchell Construction had been the most challenging of my life, but also the most formative. Financial security purchased at the cost of self-respect is ultimately the most expensive transaction one can make. I discovered the power of genuine support from people like Rachel, Jake, and Adrian, relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or advantage. These connections provided strength during difficult times, while also celebrating successes without jealousy or qualification. Most importantly, I learned that forgiveness does not require forgetting. I could acknowledge my parents' growth and maintain a relationship with them while still honoring the pain of past treatment. Boundaries are not walls but frameworks that define healthy interaction. When young employees at our company ask for career advice, I emphasize the importance of recognizing your worth, independent of others' validation. The moment you truly understand your value, I tell them, is the moment you become immune to those who would diminish it. Looking back from the perspective of one who has traveled through resentment, rupture, and careful reconstruction, I can now see my journey with clarity. Sometimes you must leave what appears secure to discover what is truly sustainable. Sometimes relationships must break completely before they can be rebuilt on healthier foundations. Sometimes the most responsible choice is walking away. Have you ever had to leave a situation that others expected you to endure? How did you find the courage to prioritize your well-being over others' expectations? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family injustice. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who fail to see it. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to write your own story on your own terms.